Right, we're rolling. On this podcast, we'll be talking about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton. This is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on another episode of Social Antics, another marketing podcast. You're joined by myself, Dave Doyle, and my co-host, Dave Alton. How's things, Dave?
Surviving, barely.
Barely.
Yeah.
Why barely surviving?
They're locked down again. Nothing going on anywhere in the world. Everything's been bleak.
Tell us something good at least, because every time we start an episode, there's always a bit of down and out. Facebook dating?
Not raining today. Facebook dating? No, you see, Facebook dating is actually very, very helpful for me because now, as opposed to people not going out with me, they have a legal obligation not to come anywhere near me. So it's actually very helpful for the rest of the world. Facebook
is doing a good favour.
He's doing me doing a good favour, in fairness. Like, so no, of all the times the Facebook dating was to release in Ireland, it's during a lockdown. Like, but anyway,
success rate through the roof.
Success rate through the roof. Yeah, no downloads.
So for this week for news, I suppose something that's popped up for me would be Tesco have drones. Drones. They're now after operating. Well, they've set up in Galway, of all places. Galway they started with.
What's wrong with Galway?
What? Well, I suppose no big buildings. I'd say that's what it was.
That's what it was. Yeah, all teeny tiny.
Teeny tiny. But no, they've set up with Tesco in Oranmore, and they've teamed up with a company called Mana on a trial basis for the next few months to basically see how it goes. Customers can order deliveries through a dedicated website where there's about 700 products available, and it's only basically small basket deliveries for the moment.
Okay, and what's the fulfillment time? How's it working? What's the USP for the consumer?
Apparently they're saying you can track it in real time, but purchases delivered within 30 minutes to 1 hour of ordering. Like, so it's pretty instant.
I mean, it's not bad in fairness. It's pretty good, but I mean, like my issue with drones is that you mentioned it there. They're never going to work in a big city.
No.
Do you know what I mean? You're not going to have a lot of drones flying around the place. And I suppose a lot of these companies, I believe anyway, just start getting into things like drones and start talking about artificial intelligence and all these big long words.
We had Amazon talking about it. Like, this is the first company I've actually definitely probably in Ireland seen really kind of trying it anyway, I suppose.
They're trying it, but for me it's just all kind of PR. We're cutting edge. We're delivering things via drone. Like, I don't see the value in it as such. Like, I mean, I suppose if you take fast fulfillment, one of the fastest fulfillment mechanisms at the moment is Deliveroo, for example, where you've got people on the ground and you can deliver. And I suppose I'm kind of maybe a bit surprised that they haven't branched into that small basket type environment to fulfill people's kind of groceries and stuff like that. I think a couple
of places did try it out. You know, they're trying to even off licenses or delivering their bottles of wine or cans or whatever. Yeah, there's a few places trying it, but there's no, I suppose, real maybe clothes or fashion retailers really trying out at the moment.
Yeah, which is strange. But like look, drones to me are, again, they're one of these things that everyone's been talking about them for years and years and years. Everything's going to be delivered via drone. I don't see any market penetration from Amazon, and if Amazon aren't going to do it, then I can absolutely assure you that Tesco aren't going to do it either. I just don't see I can see the labour cost saving in it. Obviously, if everything's robotic, you're not paying someone to do something. But in terms of economies of scale, you would want thousands of drones out there for this to make any sense whatsoever.
It's not going to be a cheap thing to run. They're saying that it'll be they've come out and said one Tesco employee will pack the stuff and the drone will have to be monitored and managed by a drone supervisor.
So you have a drone supervisor being paid to manage the drone. So the labour cost doesn't even exist then, because the drone supervisor is probably earning more than your average Deliveroo rider would for each of the drops. So I think all of this is PR spin. There is nothing going to come of this at all. Okay. At least not in the next 5 years.
We'll keep an eye on it. So, Anton, pop up this week for you.
I suppose it's more of a call out more so than anything else. A lot of people have been talking about it, but Marcus Rashford, who is a Man United football player, multi-millionaire, celebrity, kind of people that I wouldn't necessarily be kind of saying these guys are doing really, really good stuff. But in fairness to Marco Rashford, he's doing very, very good stuff in terms of looking for the UK government to offer free school meals to kids and extend that to over the midterm as well. From the stories that I've heard, he grew up and oftentimes his family didn't have food, so he was very, very reliant on free meal school programs and things like that. So I mean, in fairness to him, there's hundreds of businesses now after following him on social media, and any business that tags him in, say we're offering these meals to kids for nothing, he's putting them up on his profile. Huge amount of engagement and traction happening at the moment. I know he got an MBE a couple of weeks ago, and I just think, look, again, you said at the very, very top of the program that we start off this program really, really bleak and dour, but it's nice to see a bit of a ray of sunshine in amongst all of the job losses, businesses closing down, businesses struggling. A good news story, and it's great to see a guy who, young man himself, but obviously an idol to a lot of kids, and it's great to see him doing something so impactful. And again, like I'd always be very, very critical of a lot of things celebrities would do. So even like people who do the hospital visits and stuff like that, a lot of that is, the company saying there's another million. Whereas this guy is going above and beyond on his own back based on something that is clearly very, very personal to him. And as far as I'm concerned, he's shown up the whole British government. It's basically a big fuck you to Boris Johnson, and in a good way as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, as you said, you kind of mentioned there, and you even said it when Tesco, like that, a lot of these kind of things come out with PR stunts. They will do a one-off kind of as you said, a visit or one-off donation or a charity event or something like that.
This guy is relentless. Yeah. He's relentlessly pursuing this because it's so important to him, and it's really, really admirable. And look, I know people will look, and I'm one of these people that look at everything, criticise people because, oh well, of course he's doing that because he's a millionaire and all this. But this is a huge amount of this man's time, reputation, doing a really, really, really good thing, and I think it's great to see. Beyond that, then I think, and it's something that, and I was thinking about this the other day when the Marcus Rashford stuff started really taking off on social media. But there's a lot of businesses kind of struggling at the moment, and I saw some stats on the on Sky News where it basically said that in the UK the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which the government had, there was a 200% rise in people booking through a particular app via the study that was actually done. And it showed that if there is some sort of a mechanism whereby people can contribute to local businesses, they do tend to take it if they at all possibly can. And I'm starting to kind of think that these, call it a revolution, call it contributions, they're never going to come from institutions like government or anything like that, because it all comes across very, very forced. So I'd love for some sort of a consumer-led revolution just to give back to a lot of the people in society who have done a lot of good work since COVID basically started. So what I thought, it just popped into my head, just a great idea. So we all know with the HSE or the NHS in the UK, nurses, doctors have been putting their lives on the line realistically since the start of the pandemic, working incredible hours, and for a lot of cases really, really poor pay. On the other side, then you've got a lot of hospitality businesses who are losing money because people can't eat out. And I think, wouldn't it be a great idea for everyone? And again, look, I know a lot of people have lost their jobs, but there's a lot of people as well who they're not eating out as much as they used to, so they have a few bob in their pocket. They're not buying lunch every time they go to work because they're working from home. So people who have a few extra bob in their pocket, why don't you go out and buy a €50 voucher for somebody who who works in the NHS or works in the HSE. You're doing something good for someone who has gone above and beyond for society for the last, whatever it is, 7 months at this stage. And then you're also contributing to your local economy as well for businesses that are really, really struggling. I think it'll be great for some sort of a campaign to emerge out of that. Well, again, consumer-led campaign as well. And a very, just not similar to Joe Ice Bucket Challenge or any of these kind of things, just a very, very simple thing that people could do.
5, 10, 20 euro, whatever it is, for a voucher for someone. Any businesses, I suppose, that even want to promote, maybe, send us on if you have any deals that you can avail of, or we can promote on our pages, maybe send them on, see what we can do to help.
Yeah, why don't we start a campaign? Gift a voucher. We'll come up with a hashtag. We'll come up with a hashtag and we'll start this campaign.
Right, we'll get that rolling. For the next couple of days. Good idea. Any other news there popping up for you?
In terms of the only one that I saw now, which was, again, it's we're just going from a really, really kind of happy,
Go on, bring it down
motivational
again.
kind of here we go. Is Cafe Nero in the UK.
Local brand.
Local brand, yeah, exactly. They are looking to adopt an insolvency mechanism called a CVA, which is a company voluntary arrangement, which basically allows them to exit from loss-making outlets. Now, what essentially this means is that the company itself
They're looking for a ghetto clause.
They're looking for a ghetto clause, essentially. Like, and again, look, Cafe Nero, they would go into locations and do a huge amount of research on each location that they go into in terms of footfall, and those stats are now irrelevant. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you had a Cafe Nero positioned near, for example, a large office block, 90% of that office block is now working from home. Yeah. So there's a huge amount of these retailers who are going to be looking for. I suppose it's not a bailout, and I think this is what, and I don't mean to use this phrase, what I like about it, but they're using the systems of the law to try and work with their landlords to get out of certain rental arrangements, no longer work for their businesses. And I think there's going to be a lot more of this coming down the track rather than bailouts, because bailouts aren't going to work for all businesses.
And we will probably hear of it more from companies like this because the eyes are on these kind of businesses, I suppose, because they're big multinationals and they're, national brands and all this kind of stuff. So the news of this will probably break more, but it is tough for a lot of whether it is national brands or local brands.
Yeah, I'd expect the UK is a bit more open, to be fair, at the moment. Ireland's in complete lockdown. You're coming into Christmas now at the moment, and retailers, if they go back to level 3, apparently can only have 15 people in outdoor seating. Now, a lot of retailers don't have outdoor seating, and beyond that, it's Ireland in December.
Who's going to sell it?
Do you know what I mean? So, and again, I know the government had a scheme there where I think it was a $2,500 voucher or grant that you can get outdoor heating. You need a lot more than $2,500.
A lot of local councils put up for outdoor heating and stuff, and even some are doing the initiatives, because you can't even give something simple as you can't even give someone a blanket.
Not because of COVID.
Because of COVID. So there were a lot of restaurants for the last few weeks before the lockdown happened were doing a bring your own blanket base. They were hashtag or BYOB. Instead of bring your own beer, it was bring your own blanket, desperate times. But I think when you look at the likes of someone like Cafe Nero, a lot of them kind of brands, maybe, there's probably obviously a big difference now between someone like Cafe Nero and Starbucks, where they'd be lower priced coffee, so there's obviously a lot less margins in it, so obviously they're making even less than
business models have gone out the window. If you're high margin but you're low volume versus all of those mechanics and metrics they go out the window in a COVID world. So it's I think it's going to be interesting in terms of the way the market's going, but tis not an easy world to do business in at the moment.
Well, we've talked about the physical retailers there now, so a bit of news is after popping up from the 27th of October, I suppose, is when it's launched across the US, but TikTok have gone into partnership with Shopify. Do you want to give an explanation of Shopify, for anyone listening?
Yeah, this is huge for me. Shopify is basically an e-commerce platform, but unlike, I suppose, systems like WooCommerce and things like that, it's full integration. Yeah. So Shopify look after your fulfillment, which in the US in particular, they look after fulfillment. They invested $1 billion in that last year. They look after your payments, they look after your e-POS system, and they look after your e-commerce. So everything is integrated, whereas before you'd be using multiple different systems and everything was very, very messy, very, very difficult to manage, poor in terms of data synchronization, which obviously from our line of work is really, really important in terms of enhancing your digital marketing capabilities and using that data to target consumers and generate more revenue. So this is going to be really, really exciting. If you even take, so one of the main videos that I watch on TikTok is some of the dancers, which are just incredible. They're really, really, really interesting.
Explain that one.
The dancers. Yeah. I can't dance because we're on a podcast. So if only we were on video, I'd dance for all of our listeners.
I'll get a video of that up for anyone listening.
That's it. Yeah. So if you see, and again you can see if you have something, and you can see obviously items of clothing and stuff like that, and you just have something pop up, go and buy these runners or whatever the story is. Quick 2 clicks, done.
I imagine it'll probably go down the route of what Instagram have done, where they basically tag the products in the content.
I would imagine so.
Simple
I would imagine so.
It'll literally just pop up buy now kind of an option, or a little button underneath the content, buy now or shop now, or
No, shoppable ads, but built into, again, native content. Do you know what I mean? So they're not ads per se. Like, they are ads, but it's built into the regular content.
Well, what they said, they came out and said that basically that merchants will be able to create, run and optimize their TikTok marketing campaigns directly from the Shopify dashboard. So it's all going to be integrated from the back end, but they're basically going to be able to create, as you said, native shareable content that turns their products into in-feed video ads that will resonate with the TikTok community, which I think is quite important, because there's no point in putting ads up there that are not going to resonate with that community. You have to fit in almost, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, kids these days don't understand what ads are.
Yeah,
kids nowadays, Gen Z, haven't watched a TV ad.
It's a hindrance to
them. They don't. It's completely. I know it's a hindrance to everyone, but we're kind of, like, a lot of generations are kind of used to it because we were brought up with it. Was now they'll switch.
Yeah.
Even if there's an ad on the TV and they were watching it, they'll just go on their phone. Or if something pops up on YouTube, they'll just go, no, I'm not interested in that. Like, I mean, a lot of people say, like, you can get Spotify Premium and you can get Spotify Pay, and a lot of people say, well, Spotify the free one with a load of ads is basically just a product for the technologically illiterate. Like, because people will pay a tenner a month to opt out of ads. People cannot stand traditional advertising because it interferes with the overall experience. And I think Shopify will do a good job with this. Like, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, Shopify, I'm not going to say they're one of Amazon's main competitors, but if there was a company that could challenge them in 10 years' time, I'd be banking on possibly Shopify.
I think the main thing that TikTok and Shopify have to do is they have to go into this scenario of TikTok and, as I said, fit in. So, like, I think when you look at the TikTok audience, it basically is a huge untouched audience when it comes, as you said, in terms of ads, that they haven't been touched yet. So if they come in and start ruining that platform,
then it's dead in the water. Yeah,
do you know? So I think they have to be very, very creative when they come in to make sure that they work on the style of adverts, how it fits in, and that it comes in seamlessly. It
needs to be seamless. No, 100%. Like, I mean, I think that the advantage that Shopify have is that they've no own brand products for a start. Like with Amazon, again, we spoke about last week, they look at all the data trends and they create an own brand product and compete with the retailers in that particular space. With Shopify, you really have your own branded space and the platform is just supporting that. So Shopify don't have a marketplace like Amazon do, and therefore Shopify are working really, really hard on the ad tools that are available to marketers, whereas Amazon are kind of more interested in pushing their own products more so than anything else, because obviously they've got access to all that data. And I mean, if you look at some of the stats, like Shopify now at the moment is worth $130 billion roughly, and last year was the top performing brand in the S&P 500. They were ahead of Nike and Amazon in terms of their overall growth rate. So they are really, really, really taking this industry by storm. It's by storm, and they're going to and then what is really impressive about them as well is that they've got a really, really impressive business model. So 50% of their revenue comes from subscriptions for people using the Shopify platform. And then you've also got the rest of their revenue coming from things like payments, fulfillments, and so on and so forth. So really, really robust business model in terms of their overall growth strategy.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of news like this over the next few weeks. Like, you know, we've gotten a good bit of it already in terms of, you know, shops basically upping their ante in terms of social media. But I think these platforms and these tools are only going to get better over the next couple of weeks because of the move online, shopping online, and people's attention being brought out of the physical stores. So going back to what even you talked about there with Cafe Nero, and we even talked about with the drones, businesses have to look at how they can adapt and where they can put their brand and where they can put their products to get onto that attention.
And look for the trend. Yeah, look for the trend. I think in the market. Like, I mean, I'll be expecting, like, it's only in North America at the moment, this Shopify TikTok integration. But as soon as it comes over this side of the pond, it's one of the first things that I would be experimenting with. Yeah. With some of the fashion brands in particular that I'd be working with, because I think it's a real lucrative opportunity. It kind of opens up the door for the influencer market as well. You'll get probably a new wave of them now again. And the thing is with TikTok, from what I've seen anyway from using it, is it's not as hard maybe as the other platforms to build up a bit of a following, especially at the moment, because the algorithms are there and you're a friend. So I think you're going to have a new wave of influencers, but a new style of influencers as well. Maybe not like we had on Instagram. Celebrity, not that celebrity.
Yeah, because the thing you're it's based on your constant feed the whole time. Like, so you're going to have your little core, maybe a lot more micro influencers, but with big followings.
I've thought of a prediction.
All right. Okay.
My prediction is that with the this advertising platform, the way it's going to go into the future, is that when you're creating a video on TikTok, if you're wearing Nike, for example...
Don't give away the secrets now. Don't give it away on air, right? If we're going to make millions off this,
No. This is TikTok. TikTok,
right.
If you are listening, I am the consultant for you. What they should do is they should have a scenario where if someone is creating a TikTok and they've got Nike runners, Nike t-shirt, Adidas jumper, there should be a way that they can tag the brand in the actual video itself, and someone on the other side of that interaction, so the marketer basically will be able to review all of their videos and basically assign them ads based on the products that they have in their videos. So then it's completely organic. There's nothing dictated by the brand, only that they kind of approve the users that advertise their products. So it's entirely an organic and automated almost
kind of
experience.
Like an organic ambassador, basically.
Exactly.
Realizing next thing Nike approves you as a Nike ambassador.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And again, with a Gen Z world where a lot of them are about this becoming celebrity and carving out their own niche, and I would say that TikTok as a content creator space is absolutely phenomenal. Some of the creative stuff going on there is what I would say almost better than what we saw in the early days of YouTube. I think it's really, really good, really, really addictive stuff, really, really creative stuff. But I think there's an opportunity to monetize that creator market in the same way that YouTube did, and that would just, again, random prediction, that could be the way to do it.
Very good, very good. Well, we'll see if TikTok pick up on that.
Yeah. If anyone's in TikTok, call me now.
So I suppose is that all the news that we have for this week?
That's all I have anyway.
Perfect. So look, I think we might go into this week's focus topic, which look, we're a few days out now from the big US election coming up on the 3rd, isn't it? The 3rd of November. So what are we going to talk about this week, Dave?
I think what we're going to talk about is, a little bit on the election maybe, but more so about political marketing, I think, and the tricks, the tactics, the way political marketing has evolved over the last, I suppose, over a number of years, but particularly in the last, since Trump got elected and you've had Brexit, I think a lot of people look at those two elections going, politics has changed, the way that we advertise to people has changed, the way that we manipulate people has changed, how we persuade people has changed. Yeah,
I think from the other side of things, that I think consumers have become a lot more skeptical, and they know that they're being sold to now. Or they know, some of them, but I think it's become more of a thing now that people are expecting the worst out of social media now. So we've had a few scenarios where, like the Social Dilemma we've already talked about, the film, a lot of this is being stemmed from documentaries and programs and awareness around this kind of area.
Yeah, I think so, but I think the what's interesting about what you just said there is I did a quick search before we came on in terms of the different search terms that have been going into Google over in the US, which I found really, really interesting, because typically what candidates will do is that they will look at what is trending in terms of search terms for elections in various different states or different areas, or they look at what the different sentiment is towards certain topics on social media, and again, that all geolocated, and then when they do their rally or they do their targeted ads, it'll be based around something.
Those keywords.
Exactly. So for example, affordable housing would always be something that would be quite prevalent in the northeast and southwest in the US, just because again, affordable house price is really, really important in that area due to a supply-demand issue. So what I found very, very interesting though is that at a macro level, the terms postal voting, vaccine, and interestingly fact-checking has been some of the top search terms on Google. So people are now actually, when they hear, I presume, Donald Trump speak, they are actually actively looking for fact checkers and seeing the truth. Yeah, what is the truth in terms of what's actually being said. So, I mean, again, now in the grand scheme of things, it's a very, very small cohort of consumers still, or a small cohort of voters. But it's just an interesting trend that I thought based on last time round.
Well, I think, look, as we kind of touch on a little bit there, we've had probably social now around for about 15 years now, it's changed. Social media is meant to be for, as we would always say, it's meant to be social, but it's meant to be there for people to connect with one another. We can all probably agree that over the last few years, as we've talked about in terms of marketing, it's gotten more uses, and it's gotten more of a tool for people to use. So definitely when it comes to politics, they're right up there in terms of using social to get at their audience.
Yeah, but it's also so it's also So there's a phrase that we use in marketing called linking value, which is basically if you look at some sort of familiar characteristics or beliefs that people would have towards a certain brand, political party, and so on and so forth, then those people tend to coalesce in social media and they interact with each other in generally a positive way. I think what we've seen recently, though, is almost a form of delinking value, whereby people more and more are going onto social media to identify someone who has an opposite opinion of them and attack them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, for Trump in particular,
Especially
has been
Twitter.
a very, very powerful marketing tool for him. Like, I don't know, have you ever seen the Netflix documentary Get Me Roger Stone?
Brilliant. Yeah, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good insight into that world, you know, obviously from that point of view.
Huge.
But I thought it was a great insight. For anyone that hasn't seen it, basically Roger Stone, to me, I didn't realise he's been there for years. He's been there involved in so many campaigns. Going back to I think his first one was Nixon, if I'm right, if I can remember. He's basically a big Nixon fan. He collects memorabilia, has a Nixon tattoo, but he's gone Nixon, he's gone Reagan. I think he was involved in the Bush, George W. Bush Jr. was one of the campaigns, and then obviously onto Mr. Trump then as well. But he's been pushing.
He's kind of a Trump acolyte, though, isn't he? Really, he's been pushing him to go for the last 20 years or something.
Since Trump was very young, he's been pushing him to go for the presidency for very young, and then came in 2016. I just found here. So basically, he resigned in August 2015. Although Trump said he'd been fired, but just the Stone says he stepped down. But yeah, so he was there, but basically now he's kind of seen as an outside advisor. Basically, he's not officially part of the campaign.
He's the puppet master.
He's pulling the strings.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he's the American. No, I won't say that actually.
Don't get us in trouble.
Yeah, I won't get you in trouble. No, I won't. I thought, and the listeners know, if he thought about it, it must have been bad. But it's interesting. Joe's nickname is?
No, go on.
Rat fucker. That's what they call him.
I wasn't quick enough with the bleep there.
No, that was it. Yeah. And I think that when you think about, you know, the old American speeches of all presidents going back for years, it's all about democracy and America, the land of the free, and so on and so forth. And I actually came across this quote from Roger Stone where he said, politics is not about unifying people, it's about dividing people. And I think that really, really emphasizes the kind of attitude that he has towards politics, and he's always had it, but in a social media world, someone like him just comes to the absolute fore. And like, I mean, there's a great quote from Game of Thrones, actually, which is that he burned the world to the ground so he could be king of the ashes. And that is essentially what Roger Stone does. He basically has no regard for things like racism, xenophobia, homophobia. He will just antagonize every single
cards needs to be pulled.
Absolutely everything. Like, I mean, there was what I was just looking at earlier on, and in terms of the documentary. So when Bush was the recount vote in 2000, when Al Gore was challenging George W. Bush, he orchestrated a riot at the polling station where the recount was taking place
to distract it and to get it done again or whatever it was.
Of course he would. Like, he has a lobbying group for a load of genocidal dictators. He created a lot of conspiracy theories around the Clintons, and I'm not talking about the emails. He said that Bill Clinton was a serial racist and had fathered a bastard child.
Loads of stuff.
He's involved in WikiLeaks. Some of this stuff is absolutely incredible.
I think one thing that I've seen, it's mentioned a good bit throughout the documentary, but basically in 2018 he brought out this book called How to Win a Politics, Business and Style, and it was basically a book full. It was almost, the book The Art of War by
Sun Tzu.
So it was basically that kind of style where he had like over 100 different types of rules, but one of them was hate is stronger motivator than love. And basically he goes on, as you say, he goes on the attack of the opposition, and you can see that in the documentary he had very kind of dirty tactics in doing this. So basically Rule 47 was the big lie technique, right. And if you can actually trace this back to Nazis and propaganda and Hitler and all that they used kind of the big lie tactic, and it was one of
Joseph Goebbels' main strategies.
What was it? The director of propaganda, wasn't it?
The minister of propaganda.
Of propaganda.
And public enlightenment, I believe.
But so basically it's this whole idea of creating a tactic that's, a lie that's maybe so bold and massive and and very literally nasty, but eventually it'll take on a life of its own, that if it's repeated so much, and it could almost become even like Chinese whispers or something, that it just takes legs of its own.
And what it does is, I think, in those things is that it normalizes hate and normalizes the absolute wild. So he was also behind the Obama birther conspiracy.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, he pushed Trump. He come out. He stated that he didn't give Trump the idea, but he basically encouraged him to go with it. Like, so he's not saying he came up with the initial concept of it, but yeah, that was definitely a classic case of this kind of,
can you imagine in America 20 whatever year it was, because it wasn't the last election, it was the one before that, and Trump was getting involved in it, but he wasn't actually running. But I mean, can you imagine questioning a sitting president's nationality purely based on the colour of his skin? And this was like news, like this was everywhere, and that's what I'm saying, is it kind of normalizes this very negative and confrontational rhetoric, and what it constructs is a very, very kind of visceral image of what we refer in kind of academic terms as the other, the people over there, the people who aren't like me. And if you do that and you create hate amongst those people, not only does it make them vote a certain way, but it actually encourages them to vote in the first place, because it becomes a competition. It's getting something over something else because they're getting more than me. And that's a very, and again, his quote there about hate being stronger than love, you can see that come to life. And I think what like okay, and anyone who's been listening to this podcast will know that like I would not be a fan of this guy, but as a marketer, very, very effective. Like, I mean, he calls himself an agent provocateur, which basically is the definition of that is someone who persuades someone to do wrong. And that's exactly what he does, but he's very, very good at understanding his audience and people, and finding the right buttons to press, but at a scale that basically sways like elections.
The anti-marketer kind of.
It's a very now again, I think that's important to always look at when we're talking about political marketing, is looking at these dirty tricks that go on, because it's not like, oh, this guy is in the background and he's part of a fringe party. This guy helped Trump get elected through these tactics.
He's in the background, but he's not. It's funny, like, he's as we say, he's pulling the strings, but unless you kind of getting look into it and look into the back end of it, of who's actually involved with the campaigns, you're seeing Trump out front. But a lot of this is being pushed,
working in the shadows.
Working in the shadows, like the puppet master at the side or whatever.
100%.
So I think it is very, very clever. But then if you look at the next level of that again, when we're talking about hatred being fueled and being spread widely, that's when social media kicks in then, and that's what's probably even made his job even better. In terms of when all this content is being spread out, and we've talked about before in terms of algorithms. But that's all the content that's being pushed out from mass gatherings all over different parts of America, rallies or
polarized. There's loads of academic studies that show that riots have been caused by posts put up on social media, be they lies or be they viral content of something that people have misinterpreted, or something that people just shouldn't have in front of their screens at a particular moment in time because it is antagonistic. And that's what look we've been saying for the last couple of weeks. But like, I mean, like, Facebook is absolutely criminal of doing that, because again, their content, the more hateful it is, the more immersed someone is, the more it resonates with them, the more engaged they are, the more clicks they get in their ads. And that's what it comes down to. And I think, this is where Facebook shoulder a huge amount of responsibility. If you take the New York Times, if someone put an ad in the New York Times and it was an overtly racist ad, or it was a racist piece of content, they have screening there to say, no, of course we're not going to publish that. Facebook, because they present themselves as something that isn't a media channel, they say, oh no, that's nothing to do with us. Where if we block that, then we're infringing upon free speech. It has nothing to do with free speech. They are a platform. They are a business. If someone walked into a Burger King in the morning and started shouting racial slurs, they would be rightly fucked out of that premises. Facebook is the same. It's a business. Just because it's a very, very big business and it's over billions of people doesn't mean that they do not have a responsibility to society to then control that piece of content. And I think what's interesting is Jack Dorsey, who's the part-time CEO of Twitter, has really been I suppose leveraging the amount of bad publicity that Facebook have got because of this stuff, and they're really now pushing the anti-hate speech. They're monitoring Donald Trump's tweets. They've got a fact checker on it, all this kind of stuff.
Even what you're saying there, that they are pushing, they have control over what content. You literally just said it there. These guys can push a button to give us what content they think we should be consuming.
Correct.
And that can become very dangerous. Like, if you look at America, there's over 70% of the US population hold a social media account. You're talking 8 out of 10 Americans, with the most popular being Facebook. It says 43% of US adults would get their news from Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, is that a reliable source now going on what you said?
Well, no, it depends. See, Facebook it's a distribution tool.
Yeah, you're getting it from the brands, but the thing is, Facebook is pushing the brands to you.
Correct. And if you look, there was actually a study done a number of years ago, and because you just brought this up, no, I can't remember the exact stats around it, but I think it was that if you take legitimate news sites, about 8 to 15% of all of their clicks come directly through Facebook. If you take fake news media sites, it's about 70%. So Facebook is a more important tool for fake news sites than it is for legitimate sites, because again of that hate, and it's a way of them to get this content out to people. We said it there last week when we were talking about the party in New Zealand, who have 1% support overall, but they have I think it's 20 million more engagements on their Facebook content than all the other mainstream parties combined, and they've only 1% support. That's what these platforms need to look at. And again, I was just looking at, before we came on, I was just doing a little bit of research, because as far as I'm concerned, Facebook have done nothing to stop any of this stuff. And again, just look at the rhetoric that Facebook come out with when they release press releases and stuff like that. They said they're putting in place emergency measures within their algorithm to suppress the virality of dangerous content. Not remove, not eliminate, suppress it. And again, this is content that people have died over. It's instigated riots. This is serious stuff, and Facebook just don't take it seriously. Like, are you seriously telling me that a company with the value of Facebook, and who have created one of the most manipulative, most powerful, most complex advertising tools in the world ever, are not able to identify via all their resources and technology hate speech or racism or any of that kind of content and remove it immediately? It's nonsense.
It is. Well, like, even if you look at, so we talked about news there, Facebook users spend, this is a stat I found, about an average 38 minutes on Facebook each day, and with overall people spend about 2 hours 24 minutes across all social media, not just Facebook. So you think about you on a day-to-day basis. Are you spending 40 minutes to an hour listening to BBC News, or listening to RT or whatever?
It's a very, very good point.
You're literally engrossed in Facebook for 40 minutes, and you're just being you think you're just looking at pictures of cats and friends videos and all this kind of stuff.
I do like pictures of cats. I do like, and the dogs that jump up and down and dance.
That's it, yeah. But in between each one of those, you're getting fed a piece of content that's probably politically motivated. Particularly
around this time of year. If you're a susceptible voter, and again, Facebook's targeting tools allow you to target people who are kind of on the margins, but maybe a little bit leaning a certain direction sort of way, to convince you to go out and vote. And if you look at Brexit, for example, the main campaign, or the main tool that they used to push people in the middle, was this stuff about Turkey and them all coming into the UK, and they have Sharia law and all this type of stuff. Absolute and utter nonsense. But they knew what buttons to press and target that sliver of the population who would be manipulated by that content, and that's how you get your votes over the line. Elections are always one in the middle. You're going to have the left, you're going to have the right, you're going to have yes, you're going to have no. They're always one in the middle. And if you have the ability to use certain tactics to get to target certain individuals, then you have a very, very powerful tool on your hands. And there's another film actually that you were telling me about in relation to Brexit. What was that?
Oh, the one with Benny Cummings. Yeah, Brexit. It was called the. I'll find the name.
It was called Brexit. Did they have a meeting about what to call the film?
What keywords to use? Yeah. Brexit, the Uncivil War. Yeah, it came out in 2019. Benny Cumberbatch. It was actually commissioned by Channel 4 to go and create it, but it was actually really, really good. And it's looking from the eyes of Dominic Cummings, who is basically a political strategist as well, very similar to Roger Stone, but maybe, I don't know, will I say, as
not as nasty,
not as public even, as Roger Stone would be. But he was on the Vote Leave campaign, and he basically strategized that, but using a company I'm surprised we've gotten this far and haven't mentioned Cambridge Analytica. He basically utilised all that data and all that and Facebook and was able to target the consumers exactly where he needed to target them.
And it's not just and again, it's important here to realize that it's not just the technology. Like it's the thought process that goes into, like, it's all like the technology allows you to target people based on certain behaviors, and you can find out what they're searching for, what motivates them, whether they're listening to podcasts, whether they're reading blog. You can find out all that, but behind all of that, there is a very, very manipulative marketer like a Roger Stone or whatever you want to call it. It is ultimately marketing. Who have, you can call it creativity, depending on what way you want to call it, to manipulate and use very, very polarizing content to twist the psyche and the thought process of individuals to enable them to vote in a certain way, or to convince them or persuade them to vote in a certain way. So no, it's frightening. I mean, we don't want to go too techie today, but I think it's just interesting. I find it fascinating looking at the shadowy characters pulling the strings behind the scenes, and it's never really the politicians, it's always the marketing people, the public relations guys, the strategists, whatever you want to call them.
But when you look at the Get Me Roger Stone documentary, I highly recommend it to go and watch it, especially at the moment with the election coming up. But when you look at even the personalities, or the way that they deliver speeches, or the way they do interviews, if you look at the Nixon, Reagan, Trump, you can start to see, after I watched the documentary, you can start to see a lot of similarities between all these kind of campaigns and how they used marketing. Obviously back then a lot more traditional marketing, but how they integrated each one very, very similarly. He kind of knows he was pulling
the messages stay very similar, but how the how would you call it, the medium through which that message is communicated probably changes a bit. Another Netflix documentary going on exactly that point that you made, and I don't really want to go into that much detail on it, but is the film 13th on Netflix, where it talks about black incarceration rates based on the 13th Amendment in the United States, and it goes through every single election cycle. And when presidents or presidents-elect or candidates are starting to talk about crime, it's very, very interesting the kind of narrative words that they're saying, and ultimately this does result in it, like these are societally impactful things that people are saying. It's not just words, and I think that's what I find very, very fascinating about political marketing. Like when you're talking about Joe and Nike, or we've mentioned Brewdog a few times, and you're talking about how can I get a consumer to buy a product, whereas when you're in politics, how can I get people to vote a certain way so that I can change the world? And a lot of that is heavily orchestrated manipulation, and it's fascinating to actually analyse it and understand it.
So I think whether you believe in him or not, or you thought he was good or he's bad, whatever, doesn't really matter. But if you look at the first one to probably use social properly for the United States, now we won't not mention Ireland or England, but for the United States was Barack Obama. He was the first one to properly take on board social media, and he actually explains it very, very well. And we're giving Netflix loads of plugs today. There's a great interview with himself and David Letterman on Netflix.
Just as an FYI thought, is we don't just take our content from Netflix.
We just sit and watch Netflix all week.
We've nothing else to do. It's lockdown. And no one matching me on Facebook dating.
But he talks about how they hired and got volunteers in, younger straight out of college students, basically, that understood how social media worked, and they created content to target to consumers, because they knew what, as we talked about already, whether it's TikTok ads going out, they understand the audience that they're marketing.
And that would have been the age of organic as well, really, wouldn't it?
Where it was all
100%,
organic. Yeah, it wasn't that much. Like I found a stat there when I was looking for stuff there during the week. Last year, now this is obviously not just political, this is all advertising, but social media advertisers in the US last year spent nearly 37 billion on social media advertising.
Whoa.
Like serious money,
37 billion seems a lot. But almost too much.
No, you'd be surprised, but that's the kind of money that is being pumped into this platform. A couple of you're talking about 5, 6, 7 platforms, 5, 6, 7 mediums, even just serious money being pumped into these platforms.
When you check that stat, that seems like an abnormally high figure.
Well, my sources are reliable.
Who? Mr. Stone from the United States of America. But you actually mentioned it there a minute ago in terms of like messaging and how things change. Another thing that I think is really interesting is like one of the oldest and most historical kind of events that happen in politics is the debate. And I think how debates are now constructed and analysed has totally changed because of social media. Because you could the debate is no longer about the policies, or it's no longer about what you're actually going to do. It's two things. It's one, who actually won the debate, who was the more ferocious or masculine or whatever phrase you want to use, who actually won and who was the most aggressive in that debate. And secondly, even if you have a terrible debate overall, but you have one soundbite that can appear on a 15-second TikTok, or it can go viral on
Biden confuses Trump trashes Biden, whatever it is.
Gone. All of a sudden, you've won the debate on social media, even though you've lost the debate.
And Trump
overall.
has been doing that over the last few. Like, so you'll see if you follow him on social, the next day his team are pumping out that content.
Yeah.
You know, they're pumping out these little 30-second out of context kind of clips.
Always out of context. Sometimes they're edited,
Yeah.
and you can't even tell unless you've watched the overall debate. You know what I mean? It's very manipulative, and again, it shouldn't be allowed. Like,
and it's coming from both sides. Like, you know, it's not just one. Like, that's as you said. Like, you know, it's all sides of it. It's what they have to do to play the game. But you mentioned the two of them.
But
now, so
you actually just described it there. Like, and that's the problem. It's now a game, as opposed to talking about politics, democracy, how the world is run, how the world works, the real impact on people. It's now, I can go back to the Art of War, it is now all seen as a game, essentially.
Strategy game.
Do you know what I mean? Which is, and again, look, that is what it is. But again, even the fact that we would describe something so serious as being a game is very, it's worrying, but that's how we look at these things. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, like, when you look at that Get Me Roger Stone documentary, like, you know, that's what he's doing. You can literally get it off him that he is playing a game.
Oh yeah. 100%.
You know, there's actually, I just came across it there. There's another one of his rules there, number 60, that sometimes you've got to turn chicken shit into chicken salad.
Delightful.
But he also has one there that says white shirt plus tan face equals confidence. Does it sound familiar?
Was a little bit alright, yeah. That'd be slightly different over in Ireland. Bald and beer belly equals confidence.
And pale faced.
Pale faced, yeah, exactly.
So coming up to
farmers tan.
Farmers tan, yeah. We're coming up to the last couple of days, as we already mentioned now, into the election final run, I suppose. What way do you think it's going to go, or should I ask?
Look, Americans, you made the mistake once. Don't make the mistake again. I know you have this awful ability of going, starting wars and interfering with other countries' affairs and all this type of thing. And there's justifications for some of the behaviour that you engage in. There is no credible way that you can look at that man and say, that's the man that I want representing me on a global scale, holding the nuclear button. He's I'm convinced, like, presidents of the United States need to be dignified. That's their main role, because they are kind of seen as, I don't want to say leaders of the world, but you always hear, like, we don't hear from, like, if you take the other superpowers, China, for example, you never really hear anything coming out of China. They're very, very insular. Whereas the United States still see themselves as that global superpower and as that kind of leader in many ways. And I think that dignity in that regard is really, really important, and that kind of for global security and so on and so forth. And I think that anyone redneck who votes for that man, like, if they vote him in again, America, hang your heads in absolute shame. Like, it's an absolute disgrace.
Tell us how you really feel.
Also tell you, I'm telling you now, like, the main cohort they were saying last time around, because they wouldn't usually vote, was uneducated white men, and that's not a slur. That was the main cohort that got Trump over the line in a lot of the swing states last time around. I think that last time around there was two things happened. I think one, Hillary, no one liked her. I think she came across incredibly disingenuous. No one knew what her policies were, and unfortunately she's also a woman. And again, that's just an unfortunate thing in US politics. If you are a woman, it's going to be more difficult for you to get elected. So those three things combined with the absolute hate and kind of that swelling of support for people who wouldn't usually probably vote on the Trump side, I think those two things combined is after meant that Trump ultimately got elected. I think that on this occasion, and it seems as if there's going to be quite a high voting turnout, a lot of people who would have had a bit of apathy towards Clinton the last time are now going to vote for Biden just on the basis that he's not Trump. Biden has not been that impressive, but he's not Trump.
I saw a stat there that was more than 150 million people are forecast to cast a ballot this year, which is 65% of the eligible voters, which is the highest since 1908, which is absolutely huge.
And I mean, there's only one thing that would define that, and that is, like, I mean, Trump had all his support the last time round as well, right?
I don't think COVID's kind of helping this way, because it's been the early voting thing out in America is kicked in as well. I don't think that really is going to help him, because also people have voted, straight away, and they have a long time coming up to the campaign, so he could mess up a couple of things in between.
I don't on the United States, like, even I saw something on Twitter there the other day where there was a guy at a polling station, an officer armed with a rifle and a handgun, and he had a mask with "Vote Trump" on it. This is an officer, a police officer. This is someone who's meant to be impartial, protector of the state, protector of people, and going around with a gun. That's voter intimidation. Do you know what I mean? And again, that's like, America's a fucking basket case of that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, again, I almost say Ireland's always a bit of a utopia in many ways, like, because our politicians are all pretty much the same in many ways. We've kind of a steady state in that regard. We don't have any scorpions and we don't have any hurricanes, so it's a nice steady state in terms of the way things are going. Like, nothing ever too drastic happens, but you look at some of the stuff going on in the United States and you're like, my God. Like,
I think another thing that's interesting is the last time around when he was going for election, if you remember, there was a few little, I'm going to say, bloopers he had on Twitter, and they actually had to end up taking it off him. He hasn't been as vocal as he would have been back then, I think, in terms of the outrageous, really, really outrageous stuff in the last couple of weeks now. I'm just saying,
No, I think what's interesting, and this is what a lot of people who I've seen are worried about, is that does he concede the presidency, and does he concede that he lost the election, or will he throw in this voter fraud? And that's, again,
battle it to the end,
all of that. And if that goes in, then you're going to have a massive part of America really, really angry, hurting, rioting, and with the Black Lives Matter stuff that just happened recently enough, like, America is a bit of a melting pot at the moment, and you've got the anti-maskers in there as well. Like, I saw, again, going back to no scorpions, no hurricanes, no Trump. If you have if you look, there was something in Florida. There was a rally, and there was a load of guys with anti-mask banners hanging out the back of their pickup trucks. Now, we have anti-maskers in Ireland as well, but these guys had shotguns and they were shooting them out their windows.
Everybody's walk down the street and that's
mother of God, like, it's a different ball game entirely. Do you know what I mean? So let's see what happens. But I really hope Biden gets elected.
We'll finish up just on a quick reminder there of your brilliant campaign that you talked about a while ago for anyone listening again.
We'll come up with a hashtag. We don't have it yet. What do we call it? We come up with it now.
Don't put me on the spot like that. Come on, off you go.
Gift of voucher is a bit boring.
That's
isn't
a bit
it?
boring. Look, I tell you what, we'll put up something. We'll come up with a hashtag in the next couple of days, and we might see if we can get a bit of support rallied around maybe local and national businesses that need a bit of help at this time. And any suggestions are more than welcome, or ways that you can get involved are more than welcome. So thanks for everyone for listening to another episode, and I will imagine by the next time the next podcast is out, president, or the America might have a new president. We'll see how it is.
They're saying vote counting might take a long time, so let's see.
We'll see how it goes. Thanks very much everyone for listening in. Follow us on social media, subscribe to us, keep up to date, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care.
I thought that was relatively okay. I thought it wasn't too bad.
Didn't insult too many.
I didn't insult too many people. I thought it'd be a lot worse, to be honest with you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.